This is the HCI Local Chapters live stream show. I am your host, Tom Wilk, and I want to thank you whether you're watching us live tonight on Twitch. We do this every Wednesday night at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And we thank you if you're watching this on our YouTube channel or Twitch afterwards. Give us that like and subscribe to our channels and stuff so we can help share our wonderful messages. Before we start with the show, I want to also put a shout out to our show sponsor, Robert Half. They are a talent solutions firm and a leading provider of technology professionals that everybody needs to hire, and kind of a part of our show tonight talking about things like that. But they place highly skilled IT professionals either on a full-time project or even a part-time basis, but they help you keep your businesses growing. So check them out. The link is at the top, roberthalf.com/technology. All right, so let's get into our show. Today, our guest is Chris Harris. Let me give you a little bit of info on him. First of all, we could probably spend 15 minutes, Chris, just talking about your bio. But if people were listening to the pre-show, and if you didn't, you have 2 weeks to listen to it on Twitch. Chris is a multidisciplinary entrepreneur, and he's focused on the IT space. He's co-founder and CTO of BridgeTech, which is an IT services company headquartered in Portland, Oregon. Is that right, Chris? I got relatives there. Love Oregon. And he's got his company, if you were listening, just started roughly in 2013-14, and they're already making the lists of like Inc. 5000, most successful companies, fastest growing company in Oregon, number 2 on that list, and a bunch of other things. But the reason we have Chris on our show tonight is because he is not only a successful founder and entrepreneur, but he's also extremely heart-centered and passionate about giving back to his community, and he's deeply committed to mentoring the next generation of technologists. And a lot of this started off in his early days of BridgeTech. So, hey, Chris, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Wonderful opportunity, and thanks for doing what you do here.
Yeah, and thank you. And we're going to talk about what you do. So tell me, like we talked a little bit about in the intro there, that you have a passion for mentoring and getting the next generation of technologists into a career. So why is this your passion? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, I think why that really struck me is back in '99, I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't get student loans for college. I was about 18, 19 years old, and I was living on my own and just like trying to figure out how am I going to pay rent in the future and be able to support myself and trying to navigate that. And so I came along this MCSE certification, Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer program that I'd heard about. And it was about $10,000 to do it, which in 1999 was a lot of money. That's probably more money than I'd ever earned. So
right.
That might be $20,000 today. And so, all my high school jobs and everything combined, maybe I'd never earned that much. I was earning like $5 an hour in high school or $7 an hour or something at whatever job I had at the time I learned about the MCSE. So I decided to pursue that, and I borrowed $10,000 to do it, which was, it's like borrowing, more money than I'd kind of ever dealt with before. And I went into this program, and it was at a trade school for IT certifications. And it was very, very accelerated. So you do an entire course in like 3 to 5 days, an entire, textbook worth of material, 8 hours a day. It was very intense. It was kind of, I was definitely the youngest person in there. It was mostly people that were well into their career or changing careers. And so it was not the typical college experience by any means, but I did that. It took a year. It was super, super challenging. That program is made for people that already have a lot of experience, and I had none. So, I kind of reinvented myself in terms of my work ethic and everything required to pass that. It was about 6 tests and like 7 classes. So once I completed that, I started sending my resume out. I probably sent 1,000 resumes out through sites like Dice and Monster.com and the ones that were popular back then. And I did dozens of interviews, but I wasn't getting hired anywhere. And so at the same time, the Microsoft MCSE for Windows 2000 started to come out. I had the NT4 MCSE, and the Windows 2001 was like starting to come out. So as were those products. So I was like, I spent $10,000. I spent like a year, I'm sending my resume out. I'm interviewing, like, no, I'm not getting a job in this. it was so hard to do. I can't pay to do it again. To get like the Windows 2001, like, is this going to happen?
And
Or
will it
like,
ever end, right? It's
yeah,
going to
if
be
this
the
doesn't
next.
work, I don't even know what I'm going to do. So it was very scary time, and and disheartening, and I knew I needed to pay the loan back for the program, and so um I eventually got a job at this IT consulting company that had only been in business a year, and they had kind of an eye to find people that they could afford. They were such a new company, they couldn't really hire people with experience, so they kind of have an eye for picking up people that maybe had some potential that they could afford to get on board. And I was just so lucky to get that job. But I'd gone to so many interviews where somebody called me a paper MCSE that didn't have one, or, just, it was a lot of times the interviews, they'd sort of bring in their like top dog tech that would kind of, take me down a notch or whatever. And it was always, it was a pretty weird like experience interviewing back then. Or I'd kind of interview with like a 75-year-old HR person, where that interview, it's all about confidence. Like, if you're not confident, it's not going to happen. And I was totally unconfident. I was probably like the worst interviewer ever, really shy. And so I felt like most of the time I wasn't resonating when I would interview, and it wasn't happening. So such a scary time, and then such an amazing moment to get a job in the industry when I did, and I really took off and really appreciated that. So anyways, when I've come into some of the nonprofits like yourself, or another nonprofit called IT Ready, I stumbled upon them through trying to find like a school or a program to work with. And I went and spoke at a few different programs, and I went and spoke at IT Ready. And it was just, I always say, it's like the lights were on in everybody's home. It was like all the students' eyes and faces, and like just the whole energy in the room was totally different than anywhere else I'd spoke at. And I was just kind of immediately hooked. And the concept where they're providing 2 months of full-time IT training for free, in doing a job fair, which it's like there was supposed to be a job fair when I did mine, but there really wasn't. And so they had like a really incredibly engaging job fair for employers and all this stuff. I just thought that was so amazing. And it was kind of like healing for me to see that something out there is like making this easier for people than it was for myself. And that, it's just a huge blessing to be able to get to be a part of it a little bit, and contribute in some way, or meet students and be involved in the various ways that we've been able to be involved in it. And that's kind of how I came down this road to meet you guys.
So then you fast forward to like 2013, 14, 15, 16, whatever, and now you're giving back. So how do you go? I mean, obviously that's important to you. So do you practice what you preach, or do you practice what was taught to you in that regard?
Yeah. So, I think for myself, like I was a really transformative hire for the IT companies I worked for. I basically do at BridgeTech what I did when I worked for other people. I don't really do anything all that different. So, but I was kind of like my own self-observation of, I didn't really have any experience or much of a resume, but made these kind of transformative contributions to companies I worked at. And then I worked for a company, and they hired somebody from Fry's Electronics. That company was very egotistical, and so like everyone kind of looked down on them and didn't take them seriously because they came from Fry's or whatever. And so I thought they were really smart. They were called a technician, but they were like the help desk tech or whatever, and everyone else was called an engineer. So anyways, but they were really good at that. Like when they would work on a customer of mine, they did a great job. So, and they kind of expressed interest in doing other stuff. So I was like, hey, why don't I give this, Sonic Wall project to you to set up this Sonic Wall firewall, and I'll come by on the weekend when you're doing it, and I'll just hang out. So if you have a question, like I'll help you out, but then you'll feel comfortable like doing this. Because he was kind of too nervous to really take on an IT project on his own. But I was like, well, I'll hang around, and then, you can do it. And so I just did that once or twice on a couple projects this guy was working on. And then after that, like I wasn't involved at all. And he started doing projects everywhere. He started doing stuff the first time anybody in the company had done it. And now he's one of their most senior people at that company, and has like a fantastic career. So that was, and then this other guy that was really surly and like difficult for everybody to get along with, but probably the kind of known as being the smartest one at that shop. He like kind of took me under his wing and started mentoring me because he saw me mentor this other person, and he was like sort of this unobtainium, networking god person. And so
Right.
it was interesting. Like I opened the door for then me to learn, which I didn't expect. And so I think that experience, when I started BridgeTech, I thought, this this tremendously strong employee was like right under everybody's nose. In my case, to be hired, like when I was interviewing all those years ago, and then in the case of this fries person, like that was right under the nose of the owners and everybody, and they didn't know what they had. And so with starting BridgeTech, I thought, can we go find those people that really want to do this and are like the perfect fit, but maybe it's not on their resume. Maybe they're coming from, wherever. So we have tremendous contributors that came from, Dutch Brothers or Target or what have you. So we're bringing on a lot of people where the industry would typically just toss their resume, wouldn't even read it because it doesn't have IT jobs on it. And
Yeah.
so it's a different, our process is probably pretty differentiated because we're basically playing in what I call the pre-entry level space.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate it because I know I'll say previous employers, uh, I've fought that battle with people like, well, they're not this super networking engineer or systems engineer, so we don't want them. Like, but you don't just start out there, and really your people that you have in place most of them would love to coach people up to there. So you said one thing the key I wanted to bring up is I know when I got into the tech space and even my new job, I've been a leader for a long time, but I've done mostly L1 and L2, help desk and desktop support, and I'm doing something at a different level that I haven't done before. So you feel like that imposter syndrome when you're starting out. And so you mentioned something to me earlier on the like pre show about comfortable being wrong. I like that. So you coach people and letting them know that's okay, right?
Yeah, it was a cool question you asked because I don't think I'd ever said that before, and so now I'm like I actually took a note of it, but earlier when we were talking about it, and so yeah, to get to that, I think creating a culture where people are comfortable not knowing and comfortable being wrong with each other, and they can expose that to each other. That's really like the critical piece that everything else stems from. Because to learn, you have to be okay with yourself not knowing and other people knowing you don't know, and sort of the whole thing stems from there. So creating an environment where it's not competitive and people feel okay, like seeing what each other is working on and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I know I think I've told this story to a few of my friends know this. Like when I was earlier in my career, I had a person that aspired. I was doing desktop, basically L1 and L2 for a community college, and one of my desktop techs wanted to get on the networking team, and so I approached the networking manager, and his statement to me was, he's just a desktop tech, that he's never going to know any of this stuff. And I looked at him, and I was a little bit more let's just say mouthy at the time, or at least the filter wasn't as good as it is now. And I said, well, what the hell did you do? Wake up one day and become a network manager and network engineer? Did you plug into the matrix and you were there? It just baffled me that people have that opinion. So Chris, we are down to less than a minute to go. I told you this would go quick.
Wow.
Any parting tips for our audience, whether they be leaders that need to think about this, or people that are like new into or want to get into technology and don't know how to? Any advice?
Yeah, I think if you're trying to get in, like thinking about the problems you've solved and the different things you've done in your jobs, whether they're technical jobs or not, and thinking about good ways to talk about those that might be applicable to the IT career. So don't shoot yourself down because you haven't done a tech role. Like talk about the customer service things you've learned somewhere, or the problems you helped solve for customers somewhere. And then secondly, as far as kind of being in the pre-entry level hiring space, there's certainly opportunities to it about people can join that you can really be their first IT experience and make it a tremendously positive one, and not have cobwebs from past negative employments in your team. Because you can be a positive employer and kind of be their first one, and someone's so excited and they have this opportunity, and nobody's wrecked that, and hopefully your company, and group doesn't wreck it. I think, maybe the challenge is you're going to have a little bit higher turnover. If you're working with people, it's the first time they've ever had a career or had an IT career. They may be dabbling or experimenting and not that serious or whatever. And so, the turnover can be a little bit higher, but I think that's okay, because they get experience, and you get to, try new people out that might not have been into it, and so, or might not have gotten into it otherwise.
I agree. And you made a good point earlier about like some of the people that work at these like minimum wage jobs but they do a lot of customer service work, and they put up with a lot of cranky people. I know my son worked in a deli, and he said, I've never met so many cranky people in my life when you don't have something, if you don't cut their lunch meat a certain thickness. So I get that. And I think you're right. We're missing an opportunity if we don't look at those folks. So Chris, I want to thank you for being on the show. For your listeners out there, thank you. And check us out, our Twitch channels below, YouTube channel, and check us out on HDIlocalchapters.org. And again, Chris, thank you. And for being a guest, and wish you well on, like I said, maybe you'll be the next Elon Musk, and I'll get to say I interviewed you once.
That'd be wild.
Great.
Probably not, but maybe I'll meet him someday.
Yeah, well, you and me both, right? So thank you again, and thank you to the audience, and we'll catch you next week.
All right, take care.